one, right? Yeah, this is your second one. I think you're the, apart from Diane, so the co-host. Hey, everybody, welcome to Money Never Sleeps, episode 15. Super hyped today. Have a really great group. All people, Ian and Simon, both who I met recently over the last year and met in person and hit it off. Mando, who I've known for years. And I'm excited about this group because everyone brings a really incredible and impressive background. And so we'll dive right in with, I want to start with a broader question. All of you have done interesting things outside of crypto. Why do you do NFTs? What attracts you to NFTs? Why do you spend your time here? What interests you?
Simon, go.
Great question. Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely like this, honestly. OG, like you said, we met very recently, but it feels like I've known you for quite a long time now. I think that that bond, over the Punks brunch and then that entire weekend. So a lot of this is wasn't possible before. You could go down to your local bar or wherever and meet some people, but I think what's really interesting is having a common interest and some common ground. When we were at the brunch, we just got talking. You realize that you have so many similarities, and yeah, it's just NFTs really, I feel, brings people together more than
new friend technology, bro.
New friend, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But,
I know that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I have a story for you to give you my answer, because I'm old. I was my level 2 computer programmer card says 1983. I'm 51 years old. I'm a grandfather, in fact, as you know, G.
We're only 3 years apart, I think, 2 or 3 years apart.
Yeah. And and you have more kids than me. I just spread them out over generations.
More kids, more
you packed them all into one time. No, but once upon a time, when I was working with Jimmy Iovine, we were coming home from a crazy meeting, and it was when Masa-san from SoftBank literally wanted to buy the music business. It's a crazy story that is true. And I said, and I was just kind of, what a world, what a life. And I was looking at Jimmy, who doesn't need to be working as hard as he is. But when I work with Jimmy, he worked harder than almost anyone I've ever worked with in my entire life. He was my first phone call at 7 a.m., my last phone call at 11 p.m. And that's just how we ran business. I said, why do you do this? I kind of asked him, why do you, what gets you out of bed in the morning? And he said, once you've moved culture, it's like the high that you always want to get back. And for me, there's something about that with the internet generally. I mean, the internet in 1995 was way more interesting to me than the internet today, right? I loved it. An internet of a few like-minded people. So this comes back to what Simon was saying, was way more fun than this internet of 6.5 billion people. I remember when Usenet came on to AOL, and it was like, oh, there goes the neighborhood. And there was a friend here the other night, woman, that in 1994, when I was just building music websites, she ran new media for Capitol Records. She was over for dinner, and some other friends who were over, they looked at us and said, hey, how did you and Liz meet? Because we'd obviously been friends for a very long time. And Liz looked at me and she said, if you did music on the internet in 1995 or 94, you knew everyone else who did music on the internet. And it's true. And it does feel a bit like that. And I love that feeling. It's not just that. It's not just being in a small group. There's lots of ways of being in a small group, but you have conviction around something that is the future, right? There will be more digital ownership in the lives of people tomorrow. There's no question. And it's astounding how many people can't see that. Just in 1996, if you talk about the internet, people were like what? Or maybe they wanted to talk to you about CD-ROMs instead, that internet thing's going nowhere. The future is going to look a lot more like AOL and CompuServe, so it's those familiar feelings that keep me here. And it's why I'm always also looking for the fundamentals. I really want to know what's real, what isn't, what's a fad, what isn't. That's why I follow Mando. For guidance, exactly. But anyway, yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, I think that was a very good answer, because I do think it does feel like that, and I do like the community aspects. I think if you're asking me personally, I think selfishly it just felt like I was doing a very kind of very different job before this, just trading. And then when I found it, it just felt so perfect in terms of what I was good at and what I knew how to analyze. And I've been looking at this space before from like the collectible space and the digital ownership space, and everything just came together. I remember I was on a podcast with Raoul Paul quite early on. He was like, very, very, very rarely in the history of the human race do you get the people who are at the forefront of culture, particularly art, getting together with the people who are kind of at the center of tech and finance. Like very, very rarely do you get that. And normally great things happen. And I think the answer to that could have felt kind of weird 12 months ago. We're obviously now bouncing back pretty hard. And it seems kind of obvious that, things are going to start picking up and people are starting to come back to the space. 12 months ago, not the best tech doesn't always win. There's that classic like VHS versus Betamax, and many people at the time thought Betamax was better tech, and VHS ended up being the bigger thing. And there's been times over the last 12 months where even though I felt like this is the right tech, I still questioned, whether everyone was going to get on board with it. And I still think that is still the case. Like we're clearly not mainstream yet. It still does feel like our own little bubble where everyone's kind of said that NFTs were going to zero and they're nothing. And I'd like to now stick around and see the bounce back. I really do feel like it's digital ownership rights. It's just such an obvious thing that can be applied, and I think it's going to come back very, very strong.
Well, I'd also say it's important for humanity, and I say that sounds silly when I say it, but the reason it's important is because the alternative is like, look, you got 5.3 billion people on the internet right now. You have 5 billion people in social media. You have about 500 million people in crypto, most of them in exchanges. You have about 10 million people that actually have secure ownership of their private keys, right? So the question that you have to ask yourself is, if not this digital ownership, whose centralized database do you want all of humanity's information to live in? Like, just tell me which one. Like, is it Apple? Is it Google? Is it China? Is it EU? Is it the US? Like, whose database do you want? Right. And if you don't have a good answer to that question, then it's almost like a mission. You have to push this forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd echo what you guys said. I'd say, Mando, I felt the same way. It was a lot of my life, I said this before, I felt, I had friends and all this, but I never felt I met my people. And like Simon touched on, and as they said with Ian, the minute we met, I just like, man, felt like I've been fucking with these dudes forever, or these people forever. I do think there's something beautiful and so much potentiality here. Everything from like your digital identity, you choosing your name and the image that goes with you is a radical departure from history where your name and your image could have a huge impact, because of a variety of things. All the way to a fundamentally better way of doing a lot of stuff. So I'm the same way. I never expected to be here, but I just think, honestly, like, it does feel, if people got it, this is one of the coolest things that I've seen in my life, including from the internet and everything and like you said, like, there's some way where it can impact culture and community and people in such a positive way. I know we focus a lot on the negative in the space, but this show and all these things are to focus on the fact this could be the most positive. You could be connected with people all over the world, in a real way. So I'm with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, the positive, sometimes gets overshadowed, right? I mean, a lot of people like to highlight the negative situations or outcomes and kind of relish in those things, especially when something might feel a little bit outside the norm. So I think, props and kudos to everyone that's like hung around the last few years, because, it can be like extremely stressful, if you.
Oh, it's been savage down only.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird to be in the job that when the things go up and you're making your money, you're like, what the fuck's happening? Something's weird here. Like, everything's going up. What? Something, is they about to rug me? Like, what the fuck? Right?
I think that's the interesting thing about, the fact, I think, Mando, you touched on that about, finance and art intersecting. And, it's a very interesting proposition, like, because on one respect, you're an artist, and now there's a new way to kind of monetize yourself and your creations. And in the other breath, it's like sometimes some of these macro trends or dynamics can really influence your success, and it may not even be about you as an individual. So I think there's a lot to to
Man,
be
you
said
you
there and
you
discussed.
touched on something I think is super important because you have if you look at what the internet has brought, it's brought this like unlimited consumer choice, but basically all of that infrastructure is powered by advertising, right? So if you we know kind of what are the stats? It's like 50,000 artists on Spotify make more than $50,000 a year, and there's, I mean,
Yeah, it's
okay,
insane.
the number has grown, and but we always dreamed of more kind of middle class artists. And I always say to my friends at Google, jokingly, lovingly, like, your job is effectively stealing, right? Your job is to steal people's attention and sell it to someone else. There's a great book, Tim Wu wrote, The Attention Merchants, and like that really properly contextualize advertising as theft for me. And so, when, for example, when Instagram walked away from their NFT plans, here you have a company that has said, like, we believe in kind of virtual worlds, but we do believe in digital life, but we don't believe in digital ownership. Like, what? Like, honestly, fuck you. And you have because you had this opportunity, you wake up every morning and your job is to steal people's attention and to sell it to someone else, and you had this opportunity to make your job a value exchange between a creator and a consumer. That's a beautiful thing. Like when I worked for LVMH, the mission of that company or that group is to support creativity with operational efficiency. So yes, they sell things at the end of the day, but they do that by supporting creative people. If you don't support Jonathan Anderson, Loewe doesn't work. If you don't support, Pharrell or someone like him, then Louis Vuitton doesn't work. So they so I think that this is where, to your point, Simon, it's the thing that I thought when you said it is, it's so too bad, because when I understand also artists not wanting to get swept up in this financialization, number go up, I sold you something, now I owe you something, that is like terrible if you're an artist, so that's not what we want either. But trying to make a living on Instagram is a hustle. OG, have you ever had Dave Krugman on the show?
No, I should though.
Because
I've talked
he
about
has such a great take on this.
it. Yeah,
Like the
he's a
way that
man.
he talks about kind of going from being a photographer on Instagram to, being, to the way that he sees, like he was describing his art sort of as this battery that captures energy, right? And it stores value. And so it's such a great analogy. I actually we had one scheduled and we rescheduled it because of my schedule. And now, but I'm just now reminding myself we definitely need to do. But anyway, Simon, that's I think there's really something in that. It's like a future that we need, and there is a path. I wrote a thing about Bandcamp for Blockworks, like maybe just right before the Christmas holiday. If anybody wants to look that up, I'll retweet it.
Why don't? Yeah, why don't we can? I'll tweet it out too. One of the things that's interesting, you said advertising paying for your attention. It's even worse. News sells terror to make you read it more. And so the whole system, not just like the advertising system on social media, we all came up with like, I stopped actually, like, sort of basically opted out for the most part on news and have like curated my Twitter feed. Because the more you step back and ask yourself, hey, I'm not getting anything for free. So what are they getting from me? And they're basically, what are they doing to me to get that?
Right.
And when you start thinking like basically they're making me wake up, get angry about a whole bunch of shit I have no control over, and get all enraged and then start fighting with other people because they have different views of stuff that none of us has control over. And when you step back, you're right. Switching gears too, Ian, you brought up this like direct relationship for artists and people generally in the space. So what happens if you decide to opt into the space? You can either say, okay, well, I'm going to be active and connect directly with, if you're a collector, connect directly with artists with collectors, and so on. And a lot of people say, well, that's hard because I'm, in this other role. So you can definitely opt out. But remember, the choice isn't a world where that didn't happen. The old world choice was you go to a gallery and then you don't know what they do. You'd have no relationship with the buyer. And same, in these variety of other things, like there's not an alternative that doesn't involve either disconnecting you with a whole bunch of like other considerations, or separating artist and collector, which causes a whole bunch of other problems. So generally speaking, how do you guys feel like looking? How do you think, I agree, Ian, sort of, I feel a bit more we're in that, I hate to, but like 95, 96. How do you guys think the future, like, to me, a big switch has been this recent corporate and institutional interest. Mando and others, what do you think when you stand back? Years ago, this space was viewed as like, yo, crypto's for buying drugs and anyone in it is like a criminal. To like now it's, quite a different view, though NFTs maybe not. So what do you guys think is as companies and people who maybe are used to building businesses or all are in the process of building businesses, and you look at this space, how do you think it's perceived? What's changed? Where are we? Where's the opportunity?
Yeah, I think the way you just put it is quite interesting, because I think if you hear it every single day, you might not notice the changes. But when you take a step back and you think like, oh, 5 years ago it was like this, and then now it's like this. So I think day in, day out, it still feels kind of fringe to me, but there's no doubt it's been, each day it becomes more mainstream, and some days more than others. I think the nature of the technology always lends itself to permissionless objectives and decentralization. That's just at its base layer. Those are some of the core values. There's no doubt in my mind that, you've seen the recent directives in the EU, the UK, the US has yet to really go beyond regulation by enforcement, but you're starting to see pretty big brother style regulations coming out. At least like the EU one, like I think every transaction over $10,000 has got to be reported.
I think they backed off that.
You sure? On the Mika?
I think what they were saying. Oh, really? I thought there was 10,000 if you're like basically paying somebody.
No, that's like, in the US. I think that was in the US.
That's the US.
I'm talking about the EU. The EU one is pretty against decentralization. So they basically, what the government response is to like push as much of the transactions to happen upon centralized entities. So like, if you're going to be doing DeFi stuff, it's going to be increasingly difficult if you're going to be in the UK and in the EU, or if you're doing NFTs, even, it's going to be increasingly difficult. So they're going to try and push as many of those transactions onto, you buy your NFTs through OpenSea, or you buy your NFTs through, sorry, not OpenSea, from Coinbase, or you buy your NFTs from like a centralized entity, which has got that government regulation around it. At the same time, I still think, the nature of the technology where it was 5 years ago, you can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of decentralized marketplaces, decentralized protocols, anonymity. So I think it's going to be this great mix, if I'm honest.
Mando, do you think the attitude towards decentralization has changed a bit? Like, one of the things I feel with ETH lately, with all the hacks and so on, like you were talking about centralization, the government. Do you have any comments on, like, do you think the appetite for people in the space towards decentralization has changed?
I mean, I think obviously, I think Ian will have a strong view about that. But like for me, I never felt like decentralization is for everyone. I think it's an aspirational thing, and as I think centralization obviously leads to points of failure, but I think there's an understanding that people will be on a spectrum there of how much they want, because often it's about personal responsibility at the same time, and I think people have to like recognize where that is. I think decentralization is a bit of a meme, because at the same time, like, you're in this space every single time and every single day, and sometimes the things that people value is very far removed from that. But I think at the base layer, like the base layer, I think it's very important. I don't think it's necessarily important potentially in some of the like applications. Like if you want to start up a business that by nature is centralized, I think that's where sometimes we get a little bit wrong. I think decentralization sometimes gets conflated with kind of socialist principles of business and ownership, which I also don't really agree and have shown to not be that successful in this space. Things like DAOs have been, to be honest, not been that great, even though they are some of the core principles of, for example, the Ethereum founders. So I think centralization like particularly in some of the business ventures or applications, is useful. Like any startup in the history of the world, you could which has been super successful, you could probably see as quite authoritarian. There's one or two people governing a lot of the decisions and trying to push things forward. Like that's kind of some of the base layers of applications in this space.
100%.
But I do think that the actual idea of the system which it all runs on, kind of similar to like the internet or like the rails, I like that there's some centralization there.
No, that's exactly. I think you're getting at it, Mando. Let me take a stab at it too to just see if it's clarifying, because I think you and I see eye to eye on this. Where it matters is in things like speech and ownership, right? Can someone take away your speech? Can someone take away your ownership? That's really the fundamental question. Now, the U.S. government can take away your passport. We know that, right? We know that. That's not news. They can do that. And identity is access. It always has been. I felt it a lot during COVID. I'm an American living in Paris. My friends couldn't come here, and most of my European friends couldn't go there. I could actually move between because I was in possession of the keys. I had an American passport and a French work permit, so I could move between the continents in a way that most people couldn't. So, ownership has always meant access. It's just that, for most people, especially Americans, they don't feel it. They move state to state without having to worry about that. And most Americans have never lived in a situation where their wealth deteriorated because of inflation, or where someone came in and seized their property. And like property rights are fundamental. So I agree. I think that on an application layer, it depends on what the application is, but in most cases it matters less. But it's a question of could Sam Bankman-Fried fuck up and make me lose all of my possessions? If yes, not a good system, right? And the reality is we've built a layer of abstraction. We've built this blockchain technology that gives us this layer of abstraction so that we, can be free. And I think the way that the founding fathers, meant for us to be free, not free beer, but more like free speech and free to move and freedom of ownership, freedom to have my shit and to not have you come take it, and to not have some government decide one day not to have the video game decide they're going to wipe out your inventory, right? Like I think that technology is here with us today, and that's what matters. Now, I agree. If does it matter if your digital Equinox gym membership is decentralized? No, absolutely not the slightest bit. But to your point, Mando, it can certainly run on technologies, and maybe it's a stack of technologies, right? Because that Equinox gym membership is probably running layers above the base layer, which is like truly delivering decentralization and security, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But for things like property rights, speech, wealth, that's not fine. I don't put all my wealth into Equinox equity. So anyway,
yeah, Ian, what was your I had a thought while you were talking, because you've had your career has been quite vast, right? Like from music to LVMH and fashion, and now Ledger.
This is your way of saying I'm old. I hear you, man. That's cool. That's cool.
No, it's just way of saying you're back.
I mean, you could have spent,
your career is
spent a couple of years.
Old ass dude.
No, it's dope. Beastie Boys webmaster 93.
Right, exactly. He's got a wiki pages.
I have two webmaster titles.
What's the other one?
Do I have
Wikipedia? You have an Apple wiki.
Oh,
You have an Apple wiki. Yeah, Simon, when I pulled you up, there's somebody who's like works as a reporter at Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was like, this motherfucker's into Marvel too? And then I was like, it's not him.
Wrong guy. Yeah, but I just wanted to know, like, you've sampled different industries, and like why did you end up at Ledger? Was it just that you really wanted to focus on the sort of experience, the hardware wallet experience, versus like, would you ever go back to bring your expertise into one of these other fields that you've already transitioned through?
Yeah, I think it's, just today I had lunch with my friend who's the chief digital officer at Dior, and we were, we were talking about like, I want him to come to Bright Moments next week, and we're gonna bring the Punks group over to Dior. When I was living in LA, I moved to LA in '95, and I was working in San Francisco for most of the time I lived in LA. So I felt like this human bridge, because I think that the San Francisco people thought I was a music person, and then the LA people thought I was a tech person, and I was probably, like bad at both or something. But I really was like, I felt like my job was sort of to pollinate those two cultures, and then when I came over to LVMH, I felt that same thing, that just the distance was longer. Here was this business. When I came to LVMH, they were it was 2015. They were roughly 3% e-commerce. It was just clear there was a lot to be done there. But also for me, I just like to be at the forefront. Like, my background is more technical. I also really like to be operational. So when and it dawned on me around 2018, I made friends with Pascal Gauthier, who's the CEO of Ledger, around 2015, right when I moved here. And Ledger's a French company, and met the team. It's just, they're super impressive. They're the real thing, And I had this realization talking to Pascal. I was like, I called him in 2018. I was like, Pascal, your company's going to be huge. And he was like, oh, okay, I think so. But why do you think so all of a sudden? You didn't get it before. Like, what made you finally get it? Because it was after, of course, 2017 and ICO madness, etc. And in the aftermath of that, I looked at Ledger and I said, like the honey badger, Ledger don't care, right? Like, Ledger believes there will be more digital ownership tomorrow than there was yesterday. Right. And it doesn't really matter. The narrative doesn't matter. The question is simply, do you believe there'll be more digital ownership? So this reminded me of the early days of the internet. And I remember, like, in the 90s, you had AOL, and AOL buys Netscape, and Microsoft's got an antitrust lawsuit, and they're really fucking slugging it out. And Cisco's sitting on the side going, we don't care. We're good. Because you know what? There's going to be more internet tomorrow. So as long as we don't fuck this up, we're fine, because the whole category grows like gangbusters. So that, to me, and I think also, and it does come back, you can tell I'm passionate on the decentralization topic. Like, if you go to my LinkedIn page, it still says something that I put there in like 2001. It says, decentralizing that which was previously top down. Because I felt that in the music business. I felt like, there were these gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers didn't serve me. It was like fanzines like Maximum Rock and Roll that served me. And I wanted that decentralization. Like, I wanted to, like, listen to punk rock peers, not like, MTV. Come back to your media conversation, OG. And so I do feel like, I think private key infrastructure matters to humanity in a big way. Like, if again, 5.3 billion people on the internet, 5 billion on social media, like, damn, that's a lot of people who, if they get SIM swapped and they lose their iCloud account, they are super fucked. They lose their photos. They don't just lose a login. They might lose wealth. They might lose life, and that is literally the state of humanity. So that I think is that's why I think that this stuff actually matters. And it matters, like, at a very core level.
It's funny because I mean, if you ever hear like proper crypto OGs speak about society, there's this concept of like layers, like you just said it as well, like that there'll be the I don't know how to describe it, but you'll think of stuff like the judicial layer or the ownership layer, like how they think about the different functions of a blockchain, and they start to apply it to how society should be. And you're kind of thinking about it the same sort of way. I thought it was interesting. Like, the way that the tech is built here is that many of the different functions of the blockchain can be like split out into different layers. And at those different layers, you can actually have different rules of governance, different rules of decentralization, different rules of, various different features. And I just think it's interesting to think about how society is built in the similar sort of way. And I've actually heard people kind of compare the two. Like, you'll think of the different functions of society and build them up in that sort of way. I do think that this technology does replace some of the financial functions or some of the ownership functions in a way which weren't decentralized, which were before. So maybe that's like coming together with what I was saying before. Like, the bits that I like about decentralization are maybe just the layers of society where we feel it's lacking in the current system, and crypto finds a framework for that.
And I think it
can be better, and it can be not discriminatory. Like, one of the big things I think too is that's good about blockchain, having worked in finance, realistically, if you're a big customer at a bank and there's two trades and they have to assign them, and you're a little customer and I'm a big customer, they're gonna favor me. And so I think
Yeah,
when
of
you're
course.
talking about these different functions, it's not just that they can be done better and more efficiently, but that it protects actually you in a different way that before, you couldn't be. And so going to
I'm not
this
so
is
sure it protects though. Like, I mean, I think I've been thinking about this
you
because
still get hit me. Yeah.
no, because you still have we're tribal animal, right? And like look at what we do. It's like, oh, I want to buy. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do tonight? I'm gonna go buy a pudgy penguin. No, I'm not. The barrier is too high, right? It's just like the rest of the world. It's just a redistribution, is my point. So I agree with you. There are opportunities for sure. And there are new opportunities, and those new opportunities are going to come to new people. I think it's going to redistribute the wealth. But remember the punk rock band Crass, when they say we talk of revolution and when the people rule, but aren't the people ruling right now? What difference would it be? Just another set of bigots with their rifle sights on me. That's
I told you end up rapping.
look at airdrops, right?
Yeah.
The money system's not fair. We need blockchains. I'm gonna print my own money and distribute it to my friends. I mean, come on. Like, I'm not mad at it. I'm just saying, let's not pretend that it's fair.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking about something similar the other day, which is like, okay, so let's say our parents, or parents or whatever, they did well from traditional finance system. Like, let's say they got rid of the gold standard. We started going through proper capitalism, and everyone ran up, the baby boomer property prices going higher. Everyone did well, and blockchain to a certain extent is just the rejection of that, because we've at a certain level maybe realized for new generations that there was no way to catch up, so we just created a new system. Like, we just started airdropping our own money, and we feel like, but the nature of these systems, like ETH, Bitcoin, like, if they are to be successful in the next 30, 40 years, they are going to probably look just as top heavy as, like, are we talking to our grandchildren being like, oh, you are so lucky, that you got to get in at this level because, you could have bought Bitcoin at this level. And it's like us complaining about them buying property prices. We are ripe for a revolution if it continues in this same way. Like, ETH by nature is quite capitalist. Like, you can now stake it for interest, and that means the people with the most interest just, they're just going to keep on getting richer and richer and richer and richer. And it's the same with some of these technologies. Like, we are primed for revolution if it continues in the same way. Like, it's just the way it is.
Well, I think one of the things on that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go on. I was gonna say this is an interesting thought, because when you do think about ETH, and there's kind of two ways, right? You either you acquire through purchasing, or you acquire through doing something, giving value, providing something into the ecosystem, right? So I think there is a little bit more of a level field. I hear a lot of really beautiful stories from a lot of artists where, you actually were on your face, you had nothing, and you were able to generate this kind of wealth very quickly through just being you, and through putting out your artwork and putting out your story, and just honestly just being genuine. I was just having a conversation the other day on the weekend about it too, with another artist who was pretty much like definitely on her face on borderline, like being completely depressed. So some of these opportunities aren't available in the traditional system, which at least there's a glimmer of light through a lot of these topics and conversations I've had with other people in the space, that does kind of make it feel a little bit more achievable, even if price go up and you kind of feel like you're priced out and I can't convert my my dollars into ETH or Bitcoin. There are other ways to acquire, I think, which is
I totally agree, and that's what I mean by the redistribution.
Yeah,
I think that, and there and there are definitely new opportunities that, and also I think that by moving to a model which is not only ad based, a model where there can be patronage in a real way, not, you know, you did something for me. Human beings love a value transfer. We really do. We're not only looking for the smallest thing. How did you make the thumb thing happen earlier? Like
I by accident, I think you can like somehow.
I was trying to
totally
thumb up
know it
what
happens.
Simon was saying, but I couldn't
Yeah,
find
I
any
don't really
way.
know. It happens sometimes when I'm just sitting there. Somebody told me it was
a
if
Mac
you.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
But when I try to do it now, it doesn't work.
Anyway, I was giving you a thumbs up while you were talking,
Yeah.
Simon.
Actually, an extension of this, we've talked about decentralization, and there's this concept now. Everybody doesn't like gatekeepers, curation, or people choosing what you see. What do you guys think of that generally? Again, like Mando, you brought up for new companies and DAOs. Like I was in DAOs when I joined, was so excited in it. Terrible for getting anything done, you know. So
DAOs have this fatal flaw. It's called democracy.
Yeah, dude. Well, democracy isn't efficient, by the way. If you go to China, I went to China every year for 9 years. The shit that can happen in 1 year is insane. Like, literally, they'll be like, this town, we're going to build it. The next time you come back, there's like 10 million people there and buildings all done, everything, like a whole, you know. So democracy.
I always bring this up when people want to talk about saving the planet. I'm like, do you think democracy is the best solution for this?
Exactly. I think it's something that it's a moniker in the West where, you know, democracy. But actually, if you go about your daily life, do you really want democracy in everything you do? Do you want like, you know, you want democracy on what form of transport you get to work? Do you want democracy on every single decision in life inside your company?
No.
Every single company decision needs to go to a vote of all the shareholders. Now, like we get told that democracy is the best thing, but actually often we don't want it. What I do think is it just becomes to like layers. Like I do think to going back to your original point, I think we originally, when I first came into the space, there were fewer gatekeepers, particularly in the art space. I felt like it was quieter, but at the same time, I think most of the artists there liked it. I think Super Rare, there was some early FUD, you know, that you had to get on Super Rare was a bit of a gatekeeper. But other than that, it did still felt quite decentralized. And then so many different artists came in and so many different people tried to come in and do stuff that actually there was like a bit of a counterculture movement to kind of bring it back. People felt like bad art or bad stuff was getting to the top, or people were, you know, there was a lot of, I don't know, copying of pieces or getting on like the silly trends to catch people's interest, and people felt like high art or, you know, respectable art or good craft work was not really being respected. So I felt like maybe 12 months ago, 18 months ago, we started to move back to the idea that maybe we do need some gatekeepers, but they just maybe need to be managed in a slightly different way. So I don't know what my answer is on that. I think there is still a need for curation in anything, just like with the amount, I think the amount of NFTs released is going to get into the trillions, like very, very soon, if it hasn't already. Like the sheer quantity of information, particularly after AI now comes in, to sift through is just going to be unbelievable. So you probably do want some people who are helping, like, oh, this is actually really good craft work, and I don't have the time to look through it. So I would always follow somebody that can maybe sift through that amount of information. But at the same time, yeah, it's just like checking the power of those people and making sure that they're maybe not overly financially motivated in that role. It feels like that's sometimes where some of the issues were. Is that, you know, like Wikipedia, for example, although it has its own issues, it, you know, is still sourced by non-profit. Like people aren't being paid to be moderators of that sort of curation of information. Whereas it feels like often in like the music or in the art space, there's obviously huge incentives for that curation, and that can lead to bad incentives.
Yep.
I mean, just quick on this.
I was gonna see if Simon, you had a comment, but I when we did Beats Music, curation was the mantra, because we really felt like, you know, Spotify's their slogan was, it all starts with a search, and we were coming at it from this kind of music business perspective. We were like, look, there's too much music and most people don't know what they want. And I think music is a great just example for this because we can all understand it. People say things like, oh, I don't like the NFT art. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's like saying, I don't really like compact discs. Like what? Like, there are 100 million songs on Spotify and Apple Music, and most of them are garbage. Most every book that's ever been written, you don't want to read. Most every human being on the planet, you don't like. But you don't walk around going, books are dumb.
Yeah, I love this.
It doesn't make any sense,
agree.
right? So our job is to find the 1%. Whenever somebody tells me, first of all, like Seth Godin has this great quote, you have to find yourself a nickel anytime you use the word everybody. Because if you say everybody or nobody, you are wrong before any other words come out of your mouth. There's no such thing as everybody, right? And then you have to, like, if someone says, oh, I don't like fill in the blank, I'm like, that you're not doing your job. Your job is to find the good shit, right? Like, I don't like that group of people. I don't like that, I don't like country music. Guess what? I don't like most of it either, but there's some amazing shit. I love hip hop, but I don't like all hip hop. So it's, I think that's the thing. We need curation. I need what Mando does. Right. I need it in my life. It saves me so much time and energy. Right. And also, like, I value what the Art Blocks curation board does. It's the same thing that Mojo Magazine does for me. I don't know if you know Mojo Magazine, but everybody's like lamenting the kind of death of Pitchfork. And I'm like, just subscribe to Mojo. It's like been around forever. It comes in a paper form to your house every month. It's incredible. There's a whole bunch of reviews at the back. And guess what? You're not going to like most of them, but your new favorite album is in there. I promise you. And that's your fucking job, is to go through there, read the reviews, see what those critics have done to filter it for you, find the things that you identify with, and then share that with other people. That is your fucking job. If you are focusing on things you don't like, please don't talk to me ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, curation, don't you feel like it kind of happens naturally as well? Like like, I think, there's going to be some louder people in the space. Like, if I don't do it, someone else will. And I think more people will talk about things that are successful or that look beautiful or that have a sort of a common interest, right? So I feel just being an observer, there's oftentimes this kind of natural curation where a lot of good stuff rises to the top naturally. And I like what you're saying, Ian. A lot of the time we don't know really what we want or what we like sometimes until it's kind of in your face. And I like your relationship to search or curation on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere. Somebody needs to do it. You look back in data magazines, I would look at Vibe magazine or who's the top 10, like, somebody's saying that, and that could be through sales is one way. The amount of people interested in purchasing a piece of art or music. Another way is like somebody saying, look, you should pay attention to this. And I appreciate that, people actually doing that, whether it's a natural way of conversations like this, or if there's a space that you go to and you can see lists in the most simplest form. And that's pretty much how I even arrived here. It was somebody curated to me what he thought was good to look at in Web3. And I then went down a rabbit hole and found, more people are talking about this. And then you go down the rabbit hole and you're like, okay, like a lot more people are talking about this thing than that thing. And that's kind of like a natural curation. Maybe I should trust this more than I should trust that. And maybe I should buy this instead of buying that. It's like group thought, network effect. I mean, all those things happen and sometimes on their own.
I think it's a responsibility of every individual. Think of it this way. Like, when I was a kid, there was not choice. Sundays, there was not shit on television, right? There was like a religious program in the morning and then golf in the afternoons, right? Like, our kids don't know that world. So you have unlimited choice. When people are like, Instagram's garbage, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, unfollow absolutely everyone. Now only follow National Geographic. It's awesome. Now only follow shit that's good, right? Like, cut all that terrible shit out of your life. You have more choice than ever. If you are paying attention to, if you see things that you're not liking and you're not tuning them out, that's on you.
Oh, I love this. So hearing you talk, like I say, you have to assume we live in a world where so much choice, it's impossible. And things are subtle. Like you need first, if obvious, if negative, get out of your life. But to art, for example, like you need to understand the tools, you need to understand the context. You might not have time to talk to the artist, and all these things. Like say you want to be interested. People used to go to galleries for this function, and so I'm with you. I think you assume 99% of people and opportunities are not worth anything. That to understand an opportunity, the person looking at it has to be able to like say, hey, this is why this is cool. Like, this is what's new and interesting about it. This is why you should care. This is what this art is doing. So I'm a huge fan. I think in the broader sense of curating everything in your life, get all negativity out, curate all the people in your life so that the people around you, you're proud to be around them and lifting you up. I would say if something you're doing something that's making you unhappy, first question is, what do I have to do this? So like there's a lot of stuff in life we have to do. Like, and if you don't
or
have to do it,
is
though,
it worth doing? Yeah.
Right.
yeah, or like, hey, I have to make a legal, spousal support payment, whether I like it or not, I can, or so then if you don't have to do it though, then ask yourself, why the fuck am I doing this?
Exactly.
And so many people like spend most of their life doing all this stuff that makes them mad for no reason. They don't even have to be doing it. So I think generally, I absolutely agree. And I do think curate your friends, curate your surroundings, curate everything to make your life the best possible life it can be.
Yeah,
But I
I
mean,
love that.
that's one of the
Yeah.
best things I took from Sam Harris. He has, I heard him say once, he said, that like for everything that you do in your day, kind of ask yourself, is it worth doing? Right. Like, you don't have to like doing all of it. To your point, paying alimony or taking out the trash, they're not things you like doing, but they are worth doing, or you have to do them is another way to put it. Right. And if that's the case, do it with joy. Do it with joy.
Accept it. Don't stop fighting
Exactly.
it. Accept it. It has to happen. That's where all the pain is.
It has to happen. So why make yourself, shitty about it? Completely. And the curation, as you were talking, I was thinking of Rick Rubin, who, if you look at his life, he really has curated every moment of his day. And I'm not saying it's all like, I mean, some of it is like listening to a podcast that he loves while he's, while he's,
He's deliberate in making a choice. You're saying, as
while
opposed to
he's
just
exercising. You know what I mean? I'm
yeah.
not saying it's like important. I'm just saying it's a choice. Doing it is a choice, and I think that it's so freeing to realize that every step we take is a choice. And that, yes, there are things that we have to do, but even doing those and the way we feel about doing them is a choice.
That's right. Your narrative about it is the most important thing. And most people are passengers in their life. They're like watching it go in front of them, unfolding as if they can't impact it. So that's a really good, interesting. It was very cool for me to hear you say that, because I say similar stuff all the time. Okay, we're going to go a little longer than an hour. I want you guys to come with any questions for the group or each other, anything you want to talk about. How did you become Beastie Boys webmaster in '93?
Oh man, that story is in the Beastie Boys book. If anybody wants the longer version, which you can listen to on audiobook. I was at university and doing early stuff with music and the internet. I worked at the music library, and we built the first search and stream system for music, kind of pre-web. But there was this new thing called the World Wide Web, and I had the idea that if I moved it to the World Wide Web, I wouldn't have to write clients for Mac and for Windows. And so then I was already the keeper of the Beastie Boys frequently asked questions list on Usenet, which was like Reddit in 1992.
How'd you do that? You just did it for fun?
Just did it. It's like everything that we do, right? I mean, it's the same way, you do stuff for something for the punks community. You do it because you're part of the community. Somebody had to be the keeper of it. I'll do it. And then when this web thing came along, it made sense to move it to the web, but I'm a totally obsessive person. Maybe that's already obvious. And so it was this thing. The Beastie Boys website at the time was this thing. Like, if you came on the internet, someone would probably tell you to go check out the Beastie Boys website. To come back to the earlier question about like where Web3 is right now, I remember when you didn't say go to my website or even download my app, right? You said there's this thing called the internet, and if you get a computer and a modem and an ISP and a web browser, you can look at a page really, really slowly, and there were no background colors; they were just gray, and there was no JavaScript or CSS even. There was just like an image was a character that you could put next to a letter A or a letter T if you wanted. So that was the days of that. So I and then the long story short, the Beastie Boys called me, but again, the rest of it's in the book. I have questions for all you guys. Where can I ask one? Simon,
Go ahead, please.
I want to know how you ended up like coming in-house at Apple. If I understand correctly, give us the background. You were doing design, and then
You're creative director of Apple. Is that your title?
On TV Plus, yeah, not
TV
Apple
Plus.
in general. Yeah. I mean, it was in the pandemic. Probably I think it was around February actually, so it was still pretty fresh. But prior to that, I was freelancing. I was trying to see what it was like to run my own business. Prior to that, I worked at a shop for like 10 years. So I came out here, worked for 10 years. The phone always rang at that place. I mean, it was so busy. So many stories, late nights. I mean, it was a grind. It felt like 30 years of work in a decade, honestly. But learned so much and met like so many different people, because if you can imagine, it was definitely a revolving door because it was high stakes all the time. A lot of people coming in from all around the world. Got to meet some really talented people. But then, sort of felt like it was time to see what it was like to go off on my own and wear all the hats and produce and direct, and had the good fortune to know a decent amount of people when I did leave. So having that director client experience was great, and learning how to do budgets and put your margins on top of things, and get more into the financials of the creative business, I think was really good for that 5 years of the transition. And then I was doing a lot of that, and then I just got the email from Apple, and went on a lot of interviews and had a lot of conversations. I like to really dig in and see, I feel like the same way, at the same time as someone's interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. And I think to make that step, I felt like if I do it, it's not going to be some short-term 6-month thing. Like I'm going to go in and it's, you can really do a lot, I think. And from the outside, I feel like things take a while to get done, at a place like that is huge, versus where I was at, it was like maybe 85 people tops. So I did go in knowing that if I wanted to have some kind of impact, whatever that might be, it's going to take a minute to actually do that and on board and learn. So I decided to take it and see, what it could lead to. And I felt like, honestly, Ian, and you might identify with this, there's certain times in your career where you feel like, you've reached the ceiling, and how many ways can you skin the cat? And it's like, how many ways could I do a main title sequence? How many ways can we think about doing a video game cinematic, or can we do a commercial? And the process got very familiar, and I knew the process. I learned it. I understood it. Then it just becomes down to like, okay, what does it look like, right? And what is the journey that you're taking the viewer on? So I felt like this move would really add some notches to the belt of understanding different things. And I think what really was interesting to me is the intersection of art, entertainment, television, film, and technology. And the technology component I hadn't experienced before. So that's my learning curve, and that was my learning curve.
Yeah, because
And
now
I
you're
think
really
we'll
on
continue
the
to be
platform
so.
side. You're
Yeah.
delivering the platform where people
on the
consume the
product.
media instead of just delivering the media.
Right. And we create the media, we went out and, we do shoots a lot, and, but a lot of it is you got to think about the journey and the experience at the same time. So that is something that I never had to think about. It's like, oh, you're delivering something for film, or it's going to go on TV. There's a few different formats. Here you go. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
But we have to think about, how is this going to be surfaced? How are they going to find it? All of that stuff. So
Yeah. That's how I always use that I feel like that's also something I really did learn from the Beastie Boys. Like, because there
Yeah.
are some artists that just want to turn the record in and then they want the record label to do all the work. Where the Beastie
Right.
Boys,
Yeah.
like the lyric sheet mattered to them, right?
Mhm.
They directed their own videos. Like they really cared about how what they made reached the and you felt that kind of love in what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How people will interact with it.
yeah. I've so much more I want to ask you about the current state of Apple Media, man. I'm sad we didn't overlap there. I would do that.
It would have been great.
Mando, we need some more out of you, buddy.
Yeah, Mando.
What you got for us today?
I want to know, and I wanted to ask you, Mando, because you see me recommend.
I know you've been a big supporter. It's been amazing.
It's not charity, right? It's like I meant when I said like we need what you do because to me it's like efficient. That's why I recommend it, right? I open it every day. It's smart. It's efficient. It's not full of like clickbait headlines. It's like shit that matters. Why do you do it, right? There are so many people that do it in a way that's like I'm like farming for I'm farming for clicks, and I feel like you, NLW, who does the breakdown. I always point to Maria's weekly roundup as well.
Yeah, she has
like
a great weekly. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, what's your philosophy here?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I haven't been doing it the whole time, and it's kind of strange because again, it's not necessarily a turn that I think I maybe even would have gone down. But I went on holiday one last August, and I remember just being so frustrated whenever I came away from the space for like a day, 2 days, that I just couldn't keep up. Like, it's not even that you wanted to keep up. It's like Twitter isn't. I'm a big fan, but if you create it right and you get the right people to follow. But the idea of you catching up on Twitter is always just like horrific. It's a horrific experience to find out the history of what's happened 2 days ago or 3 days ago in crypto Twitter. Like, I just don't even know how to do that.
Impossible. Even in chats.
It's just impossible. And I remember just being like, I was on holiday and I just didn't know what was going on. So I was like, well, I should just do this myself.
How crazy is it that like what you wanted didn't exist?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it was. I got frustrated and I was like, I feel like this.
Oh, wait,
surely
I have a
everyone else
question.
feels like this.
Yeah, here's the question. How many like crypto mailing lists did you already subscribe to when you started yours?
I feel like, honestly, and I'm not just talking up my own one, I find them so terrible as well as picking up, because often they are quite, I don't want to say boomer, like they catch up on the stories that happen on crypto Twitter like 3 days after they happen on crypto Twitter, and also like in a version where they've like heard the truth and they don't somehow get it right, and you're just like, this is just a terrible summary of what I wanted.
The Robin Hood one has become like the template. Like the Robin Hood snacks. It's like, let us dumb this down for you, Robin Hood user.
So,
Mando, yours feels like you preparing for the day, like
yes, I used to be in this background as well. Like, I know this is where I'm so uncool compared to you guys, but I used to trade high yield bonds, which is kind of a semi-private world. Like, you don't read about these stories on the internet or on regular news. Like, these are companies which are mid-sized companies, and so I constantly have to go through and like, you really are delving into the depths of finding out about these companies. Like, you have RSS feeds on hot words, and like, it would be very difficult to do. So I did something similar in that.
This is what I do. Except
I remember this shit.
This is what I do, except I do it for bands and rappers.
Yeah, it's similar, right? Like, it's like you're not going to find that on your regular, so you have to really go for it. So I was already doing that on my old job, my old job. And so I just started doing it. It felt very natural. And also, once I started doing it, I actually find it incredibly cleansing as a thing to do, because I don't look at the news again. I do it and then I'm done. The next morning, I'll do it for the next 2 hours and I'm done. Then I can focus on all the other stuff today. It stopped my scrolling almost to like, I just do not scroll. I can do calls, I can do business stuff for the rest of the day, and I don't feel I ever miss something, because the only time I really feel like I missed something is if like it's been days and I still haven't caught up. And then I feel like I have to scroll, and then like, oh, I've missed that. So as long as I'm doing it every day, I've never, maybe you missed one coin that did like a 10,000x that day. Okay, I'm always going to miss that. But you are always going to miss that. So as long as I'm refreshed every one day.
This is real. This is real learning right here. Hold on. It's once upon a time, my friend Rob Francis, who I met on Usenet in the Frank Zappa news group, this is many, many years ago. He told me he checks his email twice a day. And I was like, what?
How do you do that?
But it's so, but I was like, okay, genius. Like it's liberating. He's the CTO at, I don't know if he still does it. I have to ask him. He's the CTO at, booking.com these days. But you know, because it's time management. So Mando, I love this. You are like my pinnacle of news in crypto Twitter, and you go through that news and you put it out there and then you turn that shit off and get back to work. Okay. So now I'm going to take a cue from you right now, which is I'm not going to look at the news except for Mando minutes. I'm going to spend whatever I need to spend on it. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I'm done. Fuck it.
It is revolutionary in how you do it. Like the other way that news has gone. So there's two ways that news has gone. It's kind of what I did, which is almost like I'd like to say it's like a TikTok form of news. Like you get each thing in 30 seconds. Everyone wants these TikTok videos of 30 seconds and they move on. So you can get through that and you can get each headline done. I try and make them like 7 words. So you get what you need to know and you're done. So everyone gets it very, very quickly. The other form of news is to post breaking news and be the account that posts breaking news. And I find that like mind-numbingly horrific. And the barriers to entry are very, very low. Like anyone can post a headline. And that's the way that some news goes in the crypto universe. And I was like, no, I can't do that. Like that's the worst form to be that account.
It's literally the race to the bottom. Stuff. It's literally the race to the bottom because you're going to get it wrong too. It's a matter of time before you get it wrong. Right.
So, one more general thing. Yeah. Mando, I was going to say that I'd love to hear, like you made an excellent point. One of the things we talked about before with some of the people I've talked is like, how do you keep control of your life in this space now? Many people have a job. You have to be 24/7. Like you said, you have to consume all this news. So talk a bit more about how this like made such an improvement on your life. And you actually have quite a rigorous daily schedule, like between all the shows. Talk about how you're able to do that. I'd love for the rest of the group to share, like, how do you balance all this shit?
Yeah, that was going to be definitely something I wanted to know from you guys as well. Like how do you...
The bear market was tough, I think. In terms of how long, like showing up each day and like really getting yourself motivated. Sometimes that was tough. And quite early on, we were like, right, well, this is, and OSF and some of the people I work with were like, right, we're going to build in some regular things that we do. So we originally started having a regular podcast, which then grew. I started doing then some regular calls that get organized with the different businesses we do. And then this just became like a regular thing. I found that, I don't know. This is not just broadly a crypto thing, but I just find building in regular routines. It's that classic example is you overestimate what you can do in a month, but you underestimate what you can do in 10 years. Like I found as though doing those things every single day has become incredibly useful. And yeah, that's basically been it. Also with exercise, now I've built that in for other parts of my life. You know, like exercise. Some like meditation stuff. Like I make sure I hit some of those things, and yeah, it's my life happiness right now is like 10 out of 10, and amazing. That's been a real change over the last 18 months.
Yeah. Mando, what time do you wake up in the morning?
I wake up at 8. I go to the gym from 8:30 to 9:30. I have breakfast with my wife until 10:30, and I start the minutes at 10:30 and get it out by 12 roughly. Oh. So it's not like I live some crazy lifestyle. It's it's just
well the shows like noon your time.
The shows my time are 3:30 p.m. So then between 12 and 3:30, I've got calls or I've got stuff to do, and then dinner, and then I'll sometimes work quite late, so I'll often have calls until I go to sleep. But yeah, it's a lot, but it's at the same time it works.
Yeah, I think that the tricky part is, right, like that was going to be my question. Like, how do you balance, like you've got your responsibilities during the day if you're not fully dedicated to this, right? And then so you're trying to fit it in around your schedule at the same time. So yeah, that's definitely something.
Your schedule, Simon? What's your schedule?
Like 9 till whenever in the evening, right? I mean, it's like every day. And then I'll try to fit in the morning a little bit. you know, a bit of research, and then in the evening come home, and you know, pretty much do the same, because it's something I've been passionate about since, I mean, like 2017-ish. So there's, like you were saying, you miss a couple of days and it's, you know, sort of game over. So you kind of you feel that FOMO, definitely, like not being up to date. So it's all about that schedule balance, and sometimes it's very, very, very over consuming. So yeah, thank you, Mando, as well, for, you know, definitely doing the curation that we were talking about.
Ian might not actually know
I
this, but I am I've been speaking to Ledger guys. We're going to be doing a weekly version of it as well. So if you've been out
There
for a
you go.
week, Ledger and Mando
Catch
Minutes are
up.
partnering up to do
Oh
a
wow,
weekly.
amazing.
Yeah.
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 How much volatility in your guys' schedule is there? Because one of the challenges I have is just between kids and everything, like not having that routine, which I used to have routine,
Yeah.
and like for me is the anchor of the day. And
Yeah.
after COVID, somehow mine's been like smashed, you know.
Yeah.
So getting
Well,
routine for
we
me,
do
like
have so many
how
events throughout the year. Like you have to give yourself some flexibility in the idea that you know you're going to drift away from it at times. But yeah, whenever I'm back at home base, I make sure I get into it almost immediately. But yeah, I think travel gets in the way of it. Life gets in the way of it occasionally. But this is not me. Like I'm not somebody who used to have this. Like I would do things and fall off the wagon, and you know, I'd start going to the gym and never go again. And it was like the way it was. It's just worked for me recently. Weirdly, it's worked more since I've had a kid, because their life is more regimented. It's like they have more scheduled base as well.
actually,
So
you
it's
see
again, I
with
can work
kids, by the
around that
way,
schedule.
how much they thrive with the schedule. That was one of my big takeaways. Like, not to get into it, but that was like, once I saw, hey, if I have this kid on exact schedule, like they're so happy. Well, if I'm on exact schedule, I wonder why wouldn't I be happier?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Anything, we have like 5 minutes left. Anything you guys want to touch on that we haven't? I love being on this with you dudes. It feels like hanging out.
I'll do this anytime, man. This is fun.
Yeah, dude, it's
It's
cool
great.
as shit.
I think
What's
Anything
going on
else?
with you, OG? Like, tell us about you. I feel like the last 6
Me?
months you've really emerged as this, like from a cocoon. Well, not a cocoon, but like you've really, I can see you enjoying the space more than I've ever seen you enjoy it.
Well, I super appreciate that. I think, look, I entered the space at a time when I was going through quite a challenging personal and then financial situation. And so, you know, I switched careers and so on. And so I think when I first entered the space, I was in quite a different place, like mentally and emotionally. The last few months, yeah, look, I started the space like many, doing like PFPs and so on. Then I found Mando and OSF. And my first like art piece was from OSF, but I view that a little different because at that point he had drops for the 101s and I would get 3 a month. And as an ex-finance guy like Mando, I also was a finance guy for over a decade. Actually, Ian, like you, I in San Francisco, there was a period I lived in San Francisco and spent 143 nights in LA. So the opposite of what you did. Yeah, I lived at like the Montage.
I saw you on that Southwest flight.
Yeah, exactly. The so I think it was a combo of a couple of things, Mando. I think, you know, thankfully I was able to work through the personal stuff. I think like finding my way in this space was a little challenging because I didn't have like, you know, that's why I'm so into this. Like we started the show on this is like the connections and the people and so on. And I think I just had an odd series of events. Like I realized, yeah, I love it. I think, you know, I had some challenges, like, you know, my mom had some health issues, my brother had some health issues, and then my partner rugged me. And what happened, I've realized, is like I tell everybody, like these challenges are when you can finally step up. And I realized like one of the challenges in trying to build a brand, just like democracies don't work. I actually think like Steve Jobs is a perfect example. Apple isn't Steve Jobs. So without Steve Jobs, there's no Apple as you see it now. And so I think like being free to run the project and kind of build relationships in the space and have the freedom to do that has really been a joy. And so I've just been following my passion and heart. And it's really crazy. I think I wrote a post a couple weeks ago. I was like looking up, I'm like, God damn, you know, I never would have guessed I was like a finance guy, a CEO of manufacturing companies, always into art and the culture and shit. But I think like it's been so encouraging, even though the bear market was brutal. I built so many relationships. And now, I feel there's a wonderful chance to like help lift up the space and be an example. And so I just had, following my soul, like, this show is actually the most watched show in crypto art right now. And then I launched a new show and we had almost 7,000 viewers of that.
We should have
And
talked
so
more
it-
about art then.
Yeah, well, each show is different reviews, but this was we had a cool. Well, I try to mix it up, but so I'm feeling really blessed, Mando. For the first time, I feel like I have some plan in terms of building 452B and so on, but just like I said, meeting Simon, meeting Ian, meeting you, like I let the universe take me, and so for the first time in my life, I truly feel I'm like in a community of like-minded, amazing people. Part of something like we've touched on here. I really do feel like this is going to be one of the coolest things ever, and like we're here and part of it. And so yeah, I'd say stuff's going phenomenal. Who knows in this space what happens, but I'm feeling super blessed and some cool things coming down the pipeline still. So,
But in that way
I'm
that
really
like,
hyped.
they say, what do they say? Life is 2% what happens to you and 98% what you do with it. Like the story you just told is such a perfect example.
Take
Your
agency.
the biggest thing about your happiness is your narrative to yourself about your life. And look, I think a lot of people cause problems like I did. I have stories about, but many of the problems I faced were like because of my own issues. And so once you get calm and deal with yourself and so on, and realize you have all these stories in your head about everything, like we've been talking about. It's like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Like, that you can be happy. Two people I've seen it. I know a bunch of people who became billionaires out here where I live. They're fucking miserable. I know a bunch of people who got into something cool they love, nothing to do with money or anything, and they feel total joy. And so for the first time in my life, in my professional work, I've always liked people and gone along, but never felt it was my people. And for the first time, I've said this, like, I fucking when I come to show up and talk shit, somebody was saying like yesterday, I was like, yo, OG will complain about how busy he is and he's like behind, but then he'll spend like half an hour cutting out Brinkman pictures to like do responses to everybody with Brinkman pictures like all day. So I don't know, it's fun to be in this game. So I appreciate that, Mando. And thank you for, Mando, you guys were kind of with me when I was just starting and it was really fun, And I like to, be with
dude,
you all these years now. We've been together. Like, yeah.
I've noticed. I mean, obviously, I think I've come out of my shell a little bit more, but definitely you. I see your smiling face on the timeline the whole time, and I think it's really great the community that you're building. It really did come full circle. I think that NFT art space. I think we just spoke about curation. I think like the curation that you bring into that community and the pieces that are coming through have been incredible.
Thanks, buddy.
And it's I didn't really know that background. Who cares? Like it sounds like that sounds like it's useful. It's useful to me. I think you can you show some leadership, so you can sometimes the space those communities need it more than
actually that's my view on this is like, look, if you look at the space and working with companies in the space, there's a lot of wonderful people, but not a lot of people with real experience running businesses, building companies, or doing like. And so one of the things is I feel like I always ask myself, like, everyone's gonna be able to see what you're doing and be able to copy it. Why won't they be able to beat you? And so I do think like this unique being able to come to this space with this background and really wanted to like lift it up like everyone on this call. Everyone on this call, or everyone on the show, I mean, I feel like we're on a call. Everyone on the show has done a lot like in their life to lift up the space, artists, like spread knowledge. And it's all like what I've tried to do is just surround myself with people like this. And what an incredible joy in life. Like I remember, even though I was successful, I had a 10-year path to like sort of get it, but did everything I thought I was supposed to do and was like financially successful. And I was like, oh my God, I did everything they told me to do. And I'm like fucking miserable. And I was like, oh shit, I better like figure out what to do. And I do feel like Ian, I'm old. I'm turning 49 this year. So I do feel finally I have like no conflict. I feel super hyped about my life. Like I'm blessed and all those things. You know what I think about a lot lately is first, like not only do we have no control, but when something happens in the moment, like you get a promotion or an opportunity or you meet somebody, sometimes you can feel so happy or sad in that moment. and you think that that has some bearing on what impact that'll have on your life. And when you realize that actually those, how you feel in a moment, something where you felt the happiest could have ended up being a time where you were totally fucked over, and vice versa. Like the most challenging times bring out the best in you. I think it's been a real opportunity, I think, in these times of challenges to be your best self and put things in perspective. So I appreciate you noticing. I love how supportive and amazing everyone's been. And look what it's, look at all the great people it brings together. So
I think OG as well. I think, you know, sometimes maybe we're blindsided to our own gifts as well. But one thing I noticed when we were talking in person, and even now, it's like when you start to get really philosophical, that's actually like a really huge gift, because it's either from a lot of your past or your life, or you've read a lot of books or wherever it might be. But when you go off and you start talking about these experiences and your viewpoints on life, it's like listening to, you know, your kind of favorite audiobook. So I think you really got
so
something there as well, besides the art, besides everything else.
I think it's why
and
we're
what you're
here.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's so sweet of you guys. And well, I really feel like blessed, aren't we? We've had such a good response from the community. So thank you so much for saying that. And that's what I'm trying to share. And hopefully, like the rest of you, having a positive impact on the space. So thank you for the kind words. This is like, I'm like, I love this fucking show.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say, what a joy, what an incredible group. What incredible space that all these people, you know, I love Ian. I love hearing your stories. Simon, we
I'm
didn't
gonna
get
see you in a
into
couple
yours.
days.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple. We got to figure out that tat, by the way. You're going to do. And then Mando, I'll see you next week too.
Yeah, I'm there on Thursday.
For some reason,
Simon, we'll send you pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
please
send you
keep
pictures.
me updated.
Get on a plane, dude. Get on a
Next year,
plane.
I'll be there next year.
We got to create a Simon troll account. So when Mando and I first hung out the very first time, like we had sort of known each other, but he was going crazy because I was showing him all these like secret troll accounts I had.
Oh, geez. So many.
Yeah. I had so many. Mando used to be called the Great Mando or Great Mando. So I had the just okay Mando and not so great Mando. Like, I still have that.
Not just for me, like every single influencer, you know, in the space, he's got a troll account, which he just has in reserve for when that person eventually pisses him off.
Oh, okay. That's what we should go into next time. There's something there's something in your background that led to that. We're gonna draw that out.
I like jokes, bro. I like jokes. All right, love you guys. I could go on forever, but what a joy. I'll see Ian and Mando. I'll see you next week. And Simon,
I'll have to say, guys, text me when you get here.
You guys.
Enjoy, fellas.
Yeah,
I'll see
wait.
you when you come back to LA, OG.
Yeah, I'll come soon. All right, much love, guys. What a joy.
Take care. Bye.
You can stay on. Okay, we're off stream.